Here we go again, another mass shooting. This one is outside of Seattle in the state of Washington at the Cascade Mall there, and it is deeply troubling, of course. So who is the guy who did it? We're going to show it to you once. Generally, this is what we're doing with all the mass shootings. We don't want to keep the information from you, but we also don't want to make these guys bigger than they are. So that's why we try not to mention the names of the shooters in Newtown, in South Carolina, in Colorado, and the list goes on and on. You know all those shootings. But it is important that you know who it is right now so we can figure out why they did it and what's the main issue here. I have a very strong opinion on that. You won't be surprised. Okay, so the guy who did it in this case is Arcan Cetin. He is a young 20-year-old guy who is, yes, an immigrant to the country. He is Turkish. He's not a Turkish American because he's a legal resident, but as far as we can tell, not an American citizen yet, and not likely to be either after this. 5 people were shot and killed. 4 women and a man later died at the hospital as well, so 5 of them. He has been caught. Now, what on God's green earth motivated this, and if anyone is responsible, who is it? So let's discuss. Washington State Patrol Sergeant Mark Francis told the media that he couldn't comment on reports that the gunman had called out a woman's name before opening fire, according to Q13 Fox. The gunman was armed with what appeared to be a hunting rifle. King 5 reports that Cetin's ex-girlfriend previously worked at the mall. So let's pause there. Look, this is still very new, a couple of days after it happened, and oftentimes there's a lot of conflicting reports, and you get much better reports as the days go on. So was it because of his girlfriend having worked at that mall? It's a fine theory, but we don't know that for sure. So let's all withhold judgment on whether that's the exact motivation. And by the way, if you're saying, yeah, but at the end of the day, these guys are lunatics because they go around shooting random people, which I say, of course, that's right, of course they are. So whether they're motivated by terrorism or an ex-girlfriend beef that they have or a disgruntled former employee, which is the Houston shooting that also just happened. Okay, so the cops are very clear here. Chris Kamek, Mount Vernon Police Lieutenant, says, I don't know what his motivations were. I don't know what his motivations were to do this. I don't know what his motivations were to continue. And I don't know what his motivations were to stop. So that's a very good point, because a lot of the mass shooters, they keep on shooting and the cops show up, and then they either get captured or killed by the cops. He stopped shooting and went away, and then there was a huge manhunt for him for 24 hours, and then finally they caught him and they brought him in. And in fact, the cop who brought him in, Mike Hawley, Island County Sheriff's Lieutenant, said when he took him in, he said that Cetin said nothing. He was kind of zombie-like. Which I suppose, again, not surprising given what he did. More from the authorities, they say that right now there's no indication the attack was a terrorism act. They also said, hey, listen, to be fair, it also could not be ruled out. So it doesn't, they think that it, I mean, you can see it right there. They think that it is no indication that it's a terrorist attack, but they're not saying definitively that it can't be. So let's withhold judgment on all those fronts as to why that had happened. By the way, why are we even discussing that if it's a terrorism act? For example, there's a shooting in Houston today that we're going to discuss. There's no talk of it being terrorism. He looks like he was a disgruntled former employee, a lawyer, because that guy's not Muslim. Cetin is Turkish and hence likely to be originally Muslim. We have no idea what his philosophy or religious beliefs are today. But since he was likely born Muslim, people immediately ask, is it terrorism? And I get that question. I understand why people want to ask that, because there have been acts of terrorism by radical Muslims before. In his case, let's give more context so that you can get a better sense of it. So a couple of things happened. For most of the media, they talked about, oh, that's it, he's a Hillary supporter. Now, where did they get that from? From one tweet. This was actually sent in January of 2015. So a long time ago, right in the beginning of the primaries. He said, we win, I vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, people took that as like, aha! By the way, sorry, not the beginning of the primaries. It's been a long, long ride. Beginning of the primaries were this year, so way before the primaries. So was he a Hillary Clinton supporter all the way back then? No. It turns out it's the exact opposite. He's a Seahawks fan, and he was talking about if the Seahawks win in the playoffs, he'll even vote for Hillary Clinton. And you see from the rest of the context, the guy was not a liberal. He says, in response to a letter in the Whitby News-Times in May 2013 praising President Obama and Washington Governor Jay Inslee, who's a Democrat, Cetin commented that the pair's liberalism sounded like communism. So all those initial reports you saw about, Hillary Clinton supporter, not remotely true. In fact, on his Twitter page, which hasn't been updated since the summer of 2015, Cetin recommended Hillary Clinton and Hitler's wife to be the new face of the $10 bill. Okay, now, does that mean, we got him, he's a conservative and we should blame other conservatives for it? No, the guys who do the shootings are usually crazy, no matter what they're motivated by. So there are some instances when you say, hey, look, the talk show host shouldn't have said that, the politician shouldn't have said that, because we're worried about triggering unstable people. So, for example, the best example is when Bill O'Reilly kept saying about Dr. George Tiller, who was an abortion provider, Tiller the baby killer, Tiller the baby killer, Tiller the baby killer. He said it over and over again until someone shot him and killed him. So now that is inflammatory. It is direct to that person. Bill O'Reilly should have never done that. He should have been far more careful about what he said. But, you will see sometimes in some of these killers, one time a guy was going to shoot up the Tides Foundation because Glenn Beck had been talking about it and he had Beck's book. Okay, you could make some connection there because the guy keeps talking about how bad the Tides Foundation is. But even then, I'm much more wary of putting it on Beck there because Beck didn't say go kill the people in the Tides Foundation. He just said the Tides Foundation is really bad and nefarious, which is of course not true, but that's how Beck spin on it. O'Reilly, that's a little bit more concrete. Kept calling him a baby killer until somebody did something about it, right? So, and then there's the tangential things. There are many conservatives who do shootings. I don't know that you could put that on any politician, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one other thing that people have pointed out is online, very few people, but let's address it anyway. They said this guy was a subscriber to us at the Young Turks. Wow. So are 3 million other people on just our YouTube channel. When you take a look at the entire TYT network over all platforms, we have 12 million subscribers, and YouTube, Facebook, and all the other platforms. And most of them are young males. So there's been a couple of shooters who subscribed to our channel. They were not remotely liberal. One was a whole male empowerment nonsense guy in Santa Barbara that is the exact opposite of what we preach. This guy apparently was a conservative, opposite of what we preach. We never, ever condone violence. I was, in the midst of this tragedy, slightly amused when someone said, will you disavow Cetin? What's there not to disavow? Of course, anybody that's a rational and decent human being disavows Cetin. There's nothing to disavow. It's obvious that everybody disavows him. So it's like asking the Seahawks to disavow him, or ABC, if you ever watched ABC, to disavow him, or ESPN, if you ever watch the Seahawks on ESPN, to disavow him, or us to disavow him, is insanity. We have every month on the Young Turks, again, across all platforms, about 70 million unique viewers. Am I responsible for all 70 million? Oh, hell no, especially the same trolls that are asking this question. The people who watch our videos the first are the people who hate us the most. I am not remotely responsible for their actions. And every time there's an act of violence, we say, you don't meet injustice with further injustice. You don't meet senseless violence with further senseless violence. You never, ever do that. So you can't put people with the exact opposite ideology on our show because they happen to watch our show. I don't know if they're hate watching. I don't know why they're watching. Partly because everybody's watching. So that is a ridiculous point of view, and we're done with that. So now, in terms of getting back to, okay, what is the thing that we can do something about, right? Can we get, if he was a conservative, what are we going to do? Stop conservatism? No, right? If it was his, and I doubt that had, I'm going to speculate here a little bit. I doubt that had anything to do with his shooting because it seems like, this is the speculation part, the most likely answer is he got motivated by some personal animus in this case. And these guys, remember, they're unbalanced, right? So I don't think it's a political thing one way or another. So what is the one thing we can do about it? You know what it is. What's the common uniting theme for almost all of these mass shootings, acts of terrorism, etc.? The weaponry. And in this case, he could not own a gun legally because he had actually done an assault the year before. He had assaulted his stepfather, and so he's banned from owning a gun. So what did he do? He just took his stepfather's gun, his hunting rifle, it appears, and went and did the shootings in the mall. Because as I tell you all the time, we are awash in guns. There are guns and weapons and rifles everywhere, everywhere. There's over 250 million weapons in this country. So all you had to do was go, oh yeah, here's another one, boom, pick it up and go and shoot people. And by the way, every time you go into the details of the people who passed away, it is so tragic. It's heartbreaking every time. He shot people for as young as 16, as old as 95, killed a 95-year-old woman. The 16-year-old that he killed was a cancer survivor. She survived cancer, and there's 1,000 comments you could make about this guy, and he would deserve all of them. And this monster kills that poor girl. Okay, so now look, I'm going to go to Mount Vernon resident Joanne Burkholder here. And I use her comments because you guys have to understand the severity of the problem here. She says, I'm just very thankful for my life this morning. I've never been so terrified in my life. And I think that word struck me, the terrified. That's what these shooters are doing to us. They're terrorizing us. So it's all the mass shootings all across the country for all the different reasons. It terrifies us. We're worried about Syrian refugees. We're worried about refugees in general. There's been 3 refugees out of 786,000 that turned in any way towards terrorism, and 2 of those weren't even about us. Okay, but we're not worried about all the people that are unstable and unbalanced right next to us with significant weaponry. That's what's terrifying. That's real. She goes on to say, you'd think it'd happen in Everett or Seattle, but a small town of Burlington, I'd never dreamed something like this would happen. Joanne, I love you, sister, but I don't know why you think that, because everybody thinks it's not going to happen to me. All my neighbors have tremendous weaponry, and in small town America, do you have any idea how weaponized small town America is? But you think, oh, no, it's never going to happen here. I got bad news for you. Yes, it is. It's going to happen in the big towns, it's going to happen in the mid-sized towns, and it's going to happen in the small towns. Because everybody's got a gun. So no matter what their agenda is, it's so easy for them to just pick up a weapon, head over to the mall, and shoot everybody. Okay, you don't want to do anything about it because you say, oh, no way, that's my right. Okay, think about your rights next time you're in a mall. So, look, we can argue forever about what the Second Amendment actually says, but you cannot argue with the facts. We have the highest guns per capita, and we have the highest deaths by guns per capita, by a landslide. The country that comes in second to us in guns per capita is Somalia, where it is near anarchy. And that's where we are today. So, by the way, to answer Joanne's question of, like, could it possibly happen in a state like Washington and in a small town like Burlington? According to the Gun Violence Archive, this is the 6th mass shooting, meaning an incident with at least 4 victims, in 2016 in Washington. The last was July 2016, when Alan Ivanov was accused of shooting 3 people dead at a college party in town of Mukilteo, which is presumably another small town. And sorry, I'm sure I got the pronunciation of that wrong. Now, you probably never even heard of Alan because, that's only 3 people shot dead, and he's not Muslim, so there wasn't a giant uproar over it. And now we're desensitized to this. We're used to a mass shooting, of course. Oh, only 3 people died. Good day today. Oh, 5 people died. That's a bad day today. That's 6 mass shootings in just the state of Washington in just the year 2016, and we're not anywhere near done with 2016. Together we can change the media, make it more representative of you and not the powerful. Come join us, make a difference. tytnetwork.com/join.